everyone, I'm Chirag and welcome to part 7 of the tutorial series on Amazon Textract. So in this video, I'm going to cover how to integrate A2I or human loop within Textract flow. So let's say we have a workflow around detecting key value pairs using Amazon Textract, and now we want to send the detected key value pairs with a certain confidence score for human review. So in that case, we can integrate A2I as a part of the overall Textract flow. Okay. So here we will start with the creation of the Lambda function, followed by the assigning or attaching the necessary permission, and then we are going to update the code, followed by the addition of the S3 trigger. Okay, so let's get started and navigate to Lambda management console. Now once you are within Lambda management console, click on create function from the top right corner. Give the function name, I will say Textract A2I integration, something like this, and then I'm going to select runtime as Python 3.9. Within permission, I will say create a role or create a new role with basic Lambda permission, and then we will add the permission as and when required, and then click on create function. Now here we have successfully created the Lambda function. So as a next step, click on configuration, click on permissions from the left panel, and click on this role name. So here we are going to attach few permissions that this Lambda function would require in order to invoke Textract APIs, and it will also require the additional permission to basically invoke the human loop review workflow. Okay, so once you are there, click on attach policies. Here search for AWS Lambda execute. Now this managed policy will provide access to the S3 bucket and the CloudWatch logs, followed by search for Textract. And here we will check Amazon Textract full access. So you can always create the custom policy to narrow down the permission, but for the purpose of this video we will select Amazon Textract full access, followed by search for human loop full access. And here you need to check this, that is Amazon augmented AI human loop full access. This permission we will need in order to invoke the human review workflow successfully. Okay, so check this and then click on attach policy. Now here we have successfully added the necessary permission for the Lambda function. So now let's close this. Now as the next step, click on code, and here we are going to update this code. And I have already pushed the required code to the GitHub repo, and I will paste the link of this in the video description. Okay, so I'm going to copy this code and go back to Lambda function, and then I will paste it over here. Okay, and then I will say deploy. Now here I will quickly take you through this code at the very high level. So here we are using a couple of packages like JSON, UUID, URLlib and Boto3, followed by OS for the environment variables. Okay, and then on line number 17 we are defining the Boto3 client of the Textract service, followed by flow ARN, which we will fetch from the environment variable, right? So at this point of time we have not set any sort of environment variable, but that is something that we are going to set at later point of time. Okay, and then on line number 19 we are checking for event. If there is any data in the event, then we are fetching the bucket name and the file name, followed by on line number 24 we are calling the analyze document API or the method from the Textract service. And then from line 25 to 28 we are passing the file reference, right, from which we want to extract the information, followed by on line number 31 we are passing feature types as forms because we want to extract the key value pairs from the past document. And then additionally on line number 32 we are having human loop config, right? That means human loop configuration. So we have to configure this in order to have A2I or human review workflow in place. Okay, so here on line 32 we say human loop config, where we need to pass a couple of parameters which says human loop name. So human loop name is something that we can set dynamically. So that's the reason here we are using UUID4 to dynamically generate a string, followed by the flow definition ARN, and this is something that we are going to fetch from the environment variable. So we are basically yet to create the flow definition, so that's the reason we will set it at later point of time. Followed by on line number 35 we are configuring or passing the data attributes, so where we are saying that whichever image or the document that we are uploading is free from personally identifiable information, and it's also free from the adult content. Okay, finally on line 43 we are simply printing the response, and then we have the return statements. So this is basically the very high level overview of the code that we are going to use in this video. Okay, so once you are done with that, click on deploy. Now as the next step we are going to configure the S3 bucket trigger. So in this video, I'm going to use this bucket that is textract-video-tutorial. Okay, so I'm going to click on add trigger and then search for S3. Select that and select the particular bucket on which you want to set the trigger. So I will search for Textract video tutorial, and then event type would be all object create events, and prefix I would say A2I hyphen trigger. Okay, so we will create a directory with this name in the particular bucket, and then suffix I would say .png. So here we are saying that trigger this Lambda function when any PNG file gets uploaded into the A2I-trigger folder within textract-video-tutorial bucket. Okay, and then we will say I acknowledge and then click on add. Now here we have successfully configured the S3 bucket trigger over this Lambda function. Now as a next step, we will go back to our S3 bucket and then we are going to click on create folder, and then we will say A2I-trigger. So whenever any file will get uploaded into this folder, the Lambda function will get invoked. So click on create folder. Now apart from this, we need to take care of one more configuration. So for that, click on permissions and then scroll down to the CORS configuration. Okay, so you need to make sure that you have this configuration in place. So why do we need the CORS configuration at this point of time? It's because while we will create the human review workflow, basically that workflow is going to fetch the particular image or the document from this S3 bucket, right? And it's going to use the get method to fetch that document. So that's the reason we need to allow basically a cross origin resource sharing. Okay, and that's why we have this configuration in place. So here it only requires the get method. So within allowed methods we have mentioned get, and then within allowed origins I have used the wildcard. It means that any origin can access the particular document from this bucket with necessary permission, but you can restrict this allowed origin to specific domain that you want. Okay, but at this point of time we will move on with this configuration. Okay, now once we are done with this configuration, I think we are all set in terms of S3 bucket and trigger and the Lambda function as well as with the permission part. So now as the next step, we will move on to the configuration of the human review workflow. But before we go ahead and configure that thing, let's understand this thing, right? So basically to integrate human review in the flow, we will need someone who can work on the reviewing portal and do the validation job, right? So basically to achieve that, we will create a private team of workers, and those workers would be responsible for validating the document or for the reviewing process. Okay, and then we will create the workflow around the human review, which will get triggered based on the certain conditions that we will set, because we don't want to invoke or call the human review workflow for all the invocations, right? So we are going to set some condition, right, and that condition will trigger the human review workflow. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a team of workers. Now to create a team of workers, we need to navigate to Amazon SageMaker. So search for SageMaker and click on that. Now once we are within Amazon SageMaker, click on ground truth from the left panel and then click on labeling workforces. Now here within labeling workforces, basically we get three options, that is Amazon Mechanical Turk, right, to accomplish our task. And then we can create the private workforce, or we can basically identify the potential vendor who can perform the validation or review or the labeling service for us. Okay, but in this case we will move on with the private workforce. Okay, so now to create the private workforce, click on create private team, and then it will ask for some information. So here within first tab within private team creation, it gives us two options, that you can create a private team with AWS Cognito, or you can also create a private team with OpenID Connect. Okay, in this case we will move on with the AWS Cognito part, and then within team details you need to enter the team name. It can be anything. So I will say private workforce. Okay, and then once you define the team name, we are going to add the workers, right? So who is going to work on the review or the validation job? Okay, so we need to enter the email address of those workers. Okay, so here in this case I am going to enter my email address. So I will say chiragar83@gmail.com. So here you can also enter multiple email address separated by comma. So if you want to add another email address, then you can say comma and let's say xyz@gmail.com, something like that. Okay, So this is how you can add multiple email address, or additionally you can also import the workers from the existing Amazon Cognito user group if you have one. Okay, but in this case we will move on with the invite new workers by email. And then you need to specify the organization name. So I will simply say SRCECDE, and then you need to provide the contact email. So I will simply enter my email address, that is chiragar83@gmail.com. And finally, you should be able to preview the invitation, that how this invitation would look like to the specific workers. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So it basically provides the link to basically log in with the username and the temporary password. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So let's close this and click on create private team. So as you can see on my screen, we have successfully created the private team called as private workforce, okay, along with the Amazon Cognito user pool. And here you would be able to see the labeling portal sign in URL as well. Okay, and then here under workers, we would be able to see the list of workers that are going to work on this specific project. Okay, so at this point of time, I have added only one worker, but you can click on invite new workers from here to additionally add other workers. Now, if you look at the status, then it says invitation sent, right? So once the worker will click on that link and log in into that portal, this status will change to verified or confirmed. Okay, so I will show you how that email look like, and then we are going to log in into that portal at later point of time. Now, since we have created the private workforce, we are going to create the human review workflow. So now to create the human review workflow, click on augmented AI from the left panel and then click on human review workflows. Now, once you are within human review workflows, click on create human review workflow. And then here you need to provide some settings regarding the workflow. Okay, so I will say workflow, or maybe I will say Textract workflow. And then you need to provide the S3 bucket URI where you want to store the output of the human review. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to enter S3 Textract video tutorial A to I human output. Okay, so I'm going to use the same S3 bucket, and then I'm defining a folder where I want to store the human review output. So whenever this human review workflow will get triggered, the worker is going to update or provide the feedback for the particular document. And once the worker submit that particular changes, that changes are going to get stored into this A2I human output. So that's the reason we have to provide the reference of the S3 bucket. And then in order to access that S3 bucket, it requires some sort of permission. So that's the reason we have IAM rule in place. So here, if you have existing role, then you can select that, or you can click on create new role. So here you can select specific S3 bucket, or you can select any S3 bucket. Okay, so we will move on with the any S3 bucket for now, and then I will say create. And here it is creating the IAM role, and as you can see, the role is created successfully. And then once this is done, move on to the task type. So here basically we have three task type. So the first one is the extract key value by extraction, and that is something we are interested in. And then we have recognition and the custom. So we are going to select extract key value by extraction, and then we will scroll down to Amazon Textract form extraction conditions. Right, so here basically we are going to define the conditions that will invoke the human review workflow. So here we get three options, and we can move on with all the three options. Okay, so first one is basically trigger a human review workflow for specific form keys based on the form key confidence score, or when specific form keys are missing. So here you can explicitly look for particular key name. For example, you want to look for address. Okay, so this is how you can basically look for this specific key name, and then you can add multiple keys over here by clicking on this button. Or you can also look for specific key name that falls under certain identification confidence threshold or the qualification confidence threshold. Okay, so at this point of time we are not going to use this, so I'm going to uncheck this. But we will move on with the second one, that is trigger human review for all form keys identified by Amazon Textract with confidence score in a specified range. So here I will simply say trigger this human review workflow between 50 to let's say 95. And same for qualification confidence, I will say 50 to 95. And then apart from these two, you can also randomly send a sample of forms to humans for review. But at this point of time, we will check the second one. And then we will move on to the worker task template creations. So basically worker task template creation is a template that workers are going to see on their screen. So basically you can use the default template, right? So you can create it from the default template, or you can also use your own template. Okay, but at this point of time we will select create from a default template, and then you need to provide the template name. So I will simply say default template 1, something like this, and then here you should be able to design the template. Okay, so you can enter the task description saying please review the key value pairs, and then you can also modify this instruction, right? This is how it looks like. So you can enter anything over here and it will reflect on the workers portal. And apart from that, you have additional instructions, so you can add it over here if you have any. And then we will move on to the workers. Now here we have three worker types, but since we already discussed that, we will move on with the private worker. So I'm going to select private over here, and from the drop down under private teams we will select the private workforce that we have just created. And then once this configuration is done, click on create. Now here, as you can see on my screen, we have successfully created the human review workflow. Okay, now if you remember, then we are yet to set the environment variable for the flow ARN. Okay, that is nothing but the flow definition ARN. So basically the value of flow ARN would be the ARN of this workflow. Okay, so let me copy this flow ARN and click on configuration, click on environment variable, say edit, add environment variable. Within key we will say flow ARN, and then within value we are going to copy this workflow ARN and paste it over here, and then we will say save. So now here we have successfully configured the environment variable as well. Now let's go back to the augmented AI and click on labeling workforces, and then click on private, and then we will scroll down to the workers, and as you can see the status is invitation sent. So let me show you how that email looks like. So as you can see on my screen, this is the email that I have received. So it says you are invited by particular email address from particular organization to work on a labeling project, and then here we have the link to log in into this labeling portal. So we can click on this link, and below that we will have the username and the temporary password that we can use to log in into that portal. So let me copy this temporary password, and here within username it's my email address, and then password is the temporary password. So I will say sign in, and then it will prompt us to set a new password. So I'm going to set a new password over here, and then I will say send. So as you can see, now we are into the labeling portal or the validation portal or whatever you want to call it, right? And at this point of time the job is 0 because we don't have any task to work on. Okay, so now I think we are all set to trigger this lambda function and perform the key value bar extraction, and then let's see how it will trigger the human review workflow. So let's go to our S3 bucket and open a2i-trigger, and let's drop a file into this bucket to trigger this lambda function. And here I'm going to drop this file. I don't see any problem with this file in terms of key value per extraction, but we will assume that there is some problem, and then we are going to modify some value in the labeling portal. So let me click on upload. Now here the file is uploaded successfully. Let's click on the lambda function and say monitor, say view logs in CloudWatch. And here we have the log. Let's click on that, and it says task time out. Okay, so we need to increase the timeout from 3 seconds to 10 seconds at least. So let's go back to our lambda function, click on configuration, and then click on general configuration, say edit, and then we will increase the timeout to 10 seconds, and then we will say save. And now we will re-upload that file again to trigger this lambda function. So let me drag and drop and say upload. Now here again we have uploaded the file successfully. So let's click on CloudWatch logs and look for another log. So here it is. So as you can see, it ran successfully, and here is the response that we have received from the Textract. So now if you remember, then we have set some condition, right? We have set some range about confidence score between 50 to 95. So if any of the key value pair falls under that range, then it's going to invoke or trigger the human review workflow. So let's go back to our portal and have a look. Let me reload this. And as you can see here, we have a job, right? So we have one job to perform, so we can select that, and then we need to click on start working. And then if you want to decline this task or release this task, right, so you can use this functionality from the top right corner. You also have the stop and resume later functionality. Okay, So I think it's showing us all the key value pairs, because I think all the key value pairs are detected with the score of 90 or 95, right? It's above basically 90%. So that's the reason most of the key value pairs we are seeing here. Okay, so as soon as you click on this particular block, it will highlight the key value pair in the left panel. So I think everything looks good to me. So in that case, what we will do is, let's say the total here, let's say it's not 105 and it's, let's say, 205. Okay, so we are just assuming that it misclassified, or it detected the wrong value. So we will say it's 205 and not 105. Okay, and I think we will leave rest of the key value pair as it is. So wherever there is a blank value, you need to explicitly check this, right, that value is blank. If you don't check this and click on submit, it's going to throw an exception saying please fill each value or select value is blank. Okay, so we are going to check value is blank. Now we can click on submit. So I will say submit. So now as you can see, the job has been disappeared from here. So now we can go back to our S3 bucket and let's look for the directory, right? That is AI human output. Okay, so this is the S3 bucket URI that we have provided while configuring the human review workflow. Okay, so we are going to open this and then we should be able to find the JSON file. So let's have a look. So here it is, right? That is output.json. So we will download this file and open it. So let me open it in Sublime. And I'm going to copy this and go to browser, and then we will open the JSON formatter, and then I will paste it over here, and then we will say format and beautify. So here, as you can see on my screen, this is the response and this is how it looks like. So let me quickly take you through this response, right? So within human answers, you would be able to see the modified response, right? The modified input that is provided by the workers. Okay, so we can basically search for that 205 that we modified. Okay, so let me search for it. So here, as you can see, this 105 was modified with the 205 value, and this is the human input. And then apart from human answers, we would have the human loop names. So this is basically the UUID that we have generated as a part of the human loop name, or this could be any name that you can provide. Okay, apart from human answers, you would be able to see the input content. And then here we have the AI service request. So basically it says what was the input that is provided. Okay, so here we have the S3 bucket reference. Okay, then the configuration of the human loop. So that's basically your AI service request. And then we have AI service response. So this is the default response from the Textract that you basically get. And then here we have the human task activation condition results. So this basically defines that which parameters triggered the human review workflow. So here you would be able to see the conditions that basically triggered the human review workflow. And then we have the selected AI service response. Okay, so guys, this is how the response looks like, and this is how you can basically trigger the human review workflow based on certain conditions for the key value pair extraction using Amazon Textract. So basically it's quite easy to integrate the human review workflow as a part of the overall Textract workflow for key value pair extraction. So guys, that's all I wanted to cover in this video, and as usual, if you want me to do tutorial on any use case or service, then please leave them below and I will try my best to come up with the tutorial as soon as possible. And if you have any queries or comments, then again please leave them below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.